just left this Know Your Rights training. An Idaho State Police officer walks up to you as you are walking toward downtown.
Excuse me. Hi. Trooper McCormick, Idaho State Police. Were you just coming from the training up the hill?
I wish to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches. I wish to see a lawyer.
Okay, I get that. I appreciate that. The reason I stopped you on the street here is because there was a young child who got hit, and it was a vehicle that was coming out of that same training. And so we're just trying to see if we can figure out, we don't have a plate number yet or anything, we're just trying to figure out who that car might belong to. Were you at that training?
I wish to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches, and I want to speak to a lawyer.
I appreciate that. I'm just hoping that maybe you can help us out tonight, because we've got a limited amount of time. That car is probably, I don't know, probably still headed out of town somewhere. If we can figure out who that car might belong to, I'm not investigating you at all. You're obviously not in the vehicle, you're on foot. If you can help me just with some information, we might be able to catch that person.
I apologize, but I will not provide that information without a lawyer present.
Great work.
Yay!
What was that like? How did that feel?
I really wanted to help the officer out with the investigation. It felt like you were really trying to do the right thing in the like you really were trying to work with me, and it didn't feel like, it felt like I should be trying to help you out more.
Also, cops can lie about things, so they could totally be lying about the child.
Yeah.
Whatever. They don't have to tell you the truth about that.
That's what I
Excellent
was
point.
thinking.
So you can take a seat. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that.
Do you want to say all three of those items, like I am going to remain silent, or can you just say one? I am going to remain silent.
I recommend saying all of them. Now, here's what's going to happen in real life, and I don't want you to totally beat yourself up. Here's what's going to happen in real life. You're going to be already in game to say all these three things, and you're going to forget one of them. Or you're going to feel too nervous. You're going to feel awkward to say all three of them. So if we practice to say all three, it's like having those weights on the bat, you know, so that we might actually get a single when we get up to bat.
After you say all that, and they still are just like nagging at you with those questions. I mean, if I've got a place to go, can I be like, am I being detained or
Exactly.
arrested?
Yeah. One other thing to learn, and I save it because I like to trick people on the first one, and that is this. So everybody say it.
Am I free to go?
When that encounter begins, if you're on the street especially, so if you're in Idaho, if you're in a car and you get pulled over and those lights are flashing in your direction towards you, that means you are being detained. And so you don't necessarily need to ask that if you're being pulled over. Those lights will turn off when you're free to go. But if you're on the street or somewhere else, in a courthouse, wherever it might be, you can ask the question before you even say, I'm going to remain silent. You can just say, am I free to go? Rarely is the cop going to tell you yes, but if the answer is anything other than no, or something like it, then you can begin to exit that situation. You can move along down the sidewalk. Now be very careful, because as you are free to go, you know the cop's interested in you, and so that cop's going to be watching you like a predator bird and waiting for you to jaywalk or do something else where they can re-engage, and this time the answer might be no, you're not free to go. And so just make sure you're walking away. Now the same is true for passengers in a vehicle. So if you are pulled over, if you're in a car and it's pulled over and you're a passenger in that vehicle, you can also ask if you're free to go. You will encounter a problem if you're on an interstate, because in Idaho you can't walk on the interstate shoulder, and around you might be private property, so there may be no way for you to exit without breaking another law or breaking a law. But if you get pulled over on 8th Street or something, or somebody pulls into the Boise Co-op parking lot and you're a passenger in that car, you can ask, am I free to go, and then get out and leave the situation. You don't have to, but you can. So that's the other thing that we need to know. Other than I'm going to remain silent and I do not consent to any searches. I want to see a lawyer. You can also ask, am I free to go? And rarely are you going to get an answer to that says yes. Usually what you'll get is another question to you because they want you to forget about this stuff. But that's a way to end that encounter if you're sort of like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, why am I standing here? Yeah.
So can you lead with "Am I free to go"?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
You have just left your home to go on a walk. 2 officers in uniform are walking towards you.
Stop right there. Officer McKenzie, Boise Police, have you got any identification?
I'd like to remain silent. I do not consent to searches. I'd like to see my lawyer.
Have you got any identification?
No, sir.
You've been identified by somebody who, just down the street, who said that you were walking out of their home. So if I can identify you, show it to this person, I might be able to let you go tonight.
You want to be
Right.
detained?
I need to know who you are, and then we can figure that stuff out. Can you identify yourself? If you don't have an ID with you, just tell me your name.
I do not consent to any searches. I do not want to speak any furthermore. I'd like to see a lawyer.
I get that, and that would make a lot of sense if we were in a custodial interrogation, but we're not yet. We're trying to figure out if you're going to jail tonight, or if I need to ask those questions and get you a lawyer.
I do not
So
want to speak
you don't
to
even
any
want to
further.
do that. So you want to play games. Is that what you want to do?
I do not want to speak to any further.
It sounds
I
to
do
me
not
like
consent
you want to
any
play
searches.
games. I've given
I'd
you
like
an
to see
easy
a
way out
lawyer.
of this encounter, and you don't even want to identify yourself.
I do not consent to any searches. I do not want to talk to you any further. I'd like to see a
Great
lawyer.
work. How does that
I feel like I pissed you off.
feel? What was that like?
It made me happy. It made me happy to see somebody else pissed off.
You said, like at some point you're like telling people good job, but I said the cop's not gonna be like good job, you passed. Like, at what point can we just like what can we walk away? Like if they're not answering our question.
Yeah, so that was a great. There was a point in there where I got a question, am I free to go? And I didn't answer that question. That is a point where you can turn around and begin to move away. If that officer thinks that she has the ability to detain you at that point, you're going to know about it. You're going to hear about it, and they're going to say, no, you are being detained. But the easiest way to actually get an answer to whether you're being detained is to ask, am I free to go? And when you don't get the answer yes, because you almost never will, then begin to move away from that encounter, and then you're done. It's the same thing as applause. at
You
that
can
point.
also like declare that that's what you're doing. You're saying like you haven't given me a good, like you haven't said that I'm being detained, so therefore I'm going to exit this.
Yeah.
I've actually heard, because I used to live in a really rural area, and the only officer that ever patrolled the road between Garbage and anywhere else in the world was, we called her a fish cop because she was fishing game, but we were basically all under the impression, and I don't know if this is correct, that they actually have quite a bit more authority than a normal law enforcement officer. Like the Department of Fish and Game, like what I was told when I lived in Garbage was that they can search your vehicle without a warrant because they're like looking for illegal game or things like that.
Did she tell you that?
There are differences between different types of law enforcement officers and different agencies as to what they can do and what they can't do. Those things, all of this stuff is really scary and really difficult, but the one silver lining to it all is they have to learn the hard stuff. We have to learn these 4 things, and it works for all of them.
I had a question about if you ask if you're free to go and they don't tell you no, and then you leave and if they follow you.
Which could happen. Yeah, you just, figure out where you're going to go. Go inside the, coffee house or something, or whatever it is, wherever you think you can go. You could be absolutely followed, and when we get to Wednesday and start talking about what ICE is doing, they're absolutely tracking people down and stalking them. Yeah.
Do the same thing if somebody else was following you. Don't go to your house.
Yeah.
Don't go to your car.
To me, the reason why it's important for someone like me to respond to police officers this way or whoever this way is so that it makes the ground more even between me and people who actually immigrated here, whether it was illegally or legally, so that cops have to treat everybody the same, and that if my actions aren't seen as aggressive, then that way people who are asking the same questions, who are a different color than me, it's also not seen as aggressive.
That's a reason. I mean, there's also people right now in prison who are completely innocent. And, if we lived in a world where our legal system worked, it might be different, but we live in a world where our system is designed to incarcerate people. And that system is going to continue to do that, and it's not always going to separate the guilty from the not guilty. And I have represented people who have been jailed for no reason at all, really. And part of the reason people end up in there is because they share information that a law enforcement officer or prosecutor sees through the lens of whatever their goal is. And so whether you are protecting your rights because you're worried about your future, or you're protecting your rights because you want this to be a more equitable place, I think there's a lot of reasons to learn your rights and learn how to exercise them.
With this question, am I free to go? With the scenario you played out with me, the thing is, if what the cop is saying is true, and me being a generally nice person and not liking kids getting hit by cars, I want to help the officer out with the investigation when I'm speaking to them with a lawyer present. So can I say, like, I would like to help you with a lawyer present, like, not leave, because again, I don't want to just like not help officers with a criminal investigation when if something like that did happen. So should I still just leave or wait for a lawyer, or
You could
how?
leave an anonymous tip. Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got information that you want to share with somebody because you believe that somebody else might use that information to protect somebody, then that's a choice that you can make at any point. But the comment that was made right after your role play, which is that cops can lie, and that's absolutely true. Not only can cops lie, cops often lie. It's a primary tactic that law enforcement uses as an investigative technique. And it's part of the unfairness of this relationship we have with our government, which is that the cops can lie to us and we can go to jail if we lie to the cops. But yes, absolutely, ruses, deceit, those are part of the fabric of how law enforcement does its job in this country. And so when you hear an officer tell you something, unfortunately there's no basis that you can have to believe that, because it could be just an investigative technique. Traffic stops are special in one main way, which is that they are very scary for officers. Officers are told repeatedly that traffic stops are dangerous. There's something to that. I mean, traffic stops are dangerous in the sense that they are taking place usually right next to a busy lane of traffic. And what cops are especially are afraid of, I think, is the fact that there's a whole lot, for a lot of people, there's a whole lot of stuff in the car that's within grabbing distance, and they don't know what that is, especially if it's dark or there's tinted windows. This is pretty much every law enforcement officer anywhere is trained on something like this. This is called the ladder of control, or use of force continuum is what they sometimes call it, or the ladder of control. And so officers are trained to always stay in control of a situation using this framework of this ladder of control. And at the bottom of it is presence. And so in the role plays, I use that. And that is a particular way that cops stand to try to indicate that they are in command of the situation. And that's where they'll start as a way of controlling you. And then if they don't believe that presence is doing the job, they'll move to communication, verbal commands and instructions. And if verbal commands and instructions are not working, soft physical control, putting a hand on you, and then moving up to hard physical control, restraints and holds. And then they'll go up to what are called less lethal weapons, which can include pepper spray, chemical weapons like tear gas, tasers, which are electric barbs that implant in your skin and disable you, and then up to deadly force. And so they will always try to they're trained to stay at least one level above you, usually one level above where they think you are on this ladder of control, and move up if they need to, and then if they think they've regained control, they'll move down. And so that's just good to know. So in a traffic stop situation, cops are especially on edge because they don't know what you've got in the car, and part of the interaction is usually going to be asking for your license and registration and proof of insurance. Your license is going to be in a pocket where you could also have a weapon. Your registration and your insurance is going to be in a glove box or in your bag or somewhere like that where you could also have a weapon or whatever, and so they don't know what's coming next. That's their perspective of the situation. One thing you can do is take your registration, if you have it, and your proof of insurance and just clip them to your driver's side visor, because that way you don't have to reach into a scary spot when the cop asks you for it.
So if we do have like our registration and stuff in the glove box, or our license is like on our keychain, could we like verbalize to the cop like, hey, I don't have any firearms within the car. I'm gonna go to my glove box, grab my registration and insurance, and
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I meant to say that myself, but then I'm just constantly looking at the clock. So
I actually took a concealed weapons course, and it was taught by a cop, and what he suggested was to always keep your hands on the steering wheel until the cop is at your window, so that he doesn't think you're grabbing for a gun or something.
And the cop is absolutely they're trained to watch you as they pull up to see what you're doing, and if you're moving around the car, putting all this stuff, putting your drugs underneath the seat and all this stuff, that's gonna figure into how that interaction goes.
Another thing to do if you don't want to die when you get pulled over, which I think most of us don't, is to lower all 4 of your windows in your car so that the cop, because when he rolls up and you only have yours half cracked and there's 3 other tinted windows, that can sometimes escalate if you have other people in the back. So to just roll down all 4 windows so you can visualize what's inside the car.
She sort of accidentally said, okay, but it was like in response to what you were saying. But the police can totally take that to say, okay, you just consented to a search.
That's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up.
That's something that I noticed, because I was like, if I was a cop, that's an opportunity that I would have taken if I'm like an evil.
No, understood would have been like a better way. Like if I wanted to be
understood.
Say they have like probable cause, right? Like say you got pulled over and there's like 5 cop cars behind you, and then you roll your window down and they're shouting at you to like get out. So they tell you put your hands out the window, open your car, walk backwards, put your hands behind your back, get on your knees, whatever. At no point can you really talk, like, because they have probable cause. At one point, like, could you have said that? I mean, do you shout it? Like, if they're yelling at you, like, put your hands out, open the door, walk backwards, like, could you shout it? I do not, or I'm going to remain silent. I'm not,
There's going to be law enforcement encounters like you described. Search warrant service will be like this if they come to your house. Some car stops will be like that if they already got a warrant or whatever they've got. And when you're going to say this, the reason why we're saying this is we just want a record that we said this, so that they don't have an argument that something else happened. And so you're going to wait for that opportunity when you think there's a cop close enough that you're going to be on somebody's tape, and it's quiet enough so that that can be heard on the tape.
Okay.
And then the rest of it, you just do the best you can, because what you just described, you're going to have lots of brain chemicals going on at that moment. You just make it, survive and make a record of this if you can, even if, you sometimes our freeze response can actually be our friend. And if you don't remember this, or it feels too scary to say it, you can just shut your mouth and don't say anything. Okay. And it's almost as good as this. Yeah.
If they say they're going to get a canine, do you have to wait until the dog comes, or can you just say, you say, am I free to go?
Yep.
And if they say, no, you need to wait for the canine, then you have to wait?
Yeah. But you don't consent to a search with a canine, right?
Yeah, okay, the dog comes.
Make it clear that you don't consent. I mean, you can flee, for real. I mean, in this group, I think that a lot of people's reaction to fleeing, but I mean, get on social media. There's people fleeing from ICE right now.
Yeah.
I mean, this week, and you have to assess your own stakes, like how you resist, how you respond to police. That's a personal decision, and for some people, we have the privilege to be able to say, you know what, like what they're going to do to me isn't so bad. For other people, what they're going to do to them is so bad.
Are they required to ask you to consent to a search? And if you do not say that you consent to a search, can they still do that search if you say nothing at all? Or how does that work?
So what's going to happen? They don't have to ask you whether you consent. They're not usually going to ask you. Well, they often will ask you, but sometimes they're going to search even without asking you. What you say here, when you say I do not consent to any searches, what you're doing is you're removing from their argument down the road in court the ability to say that it was a consensual search, which is the way that most searches are done. Is the cops say, look, they just agreed to this. So you may say, I do not consent to any searches, and they may search you anyhow. But you have protected, that's the protect your future part, remember that?
Yes. I had never realized the mindset shift that occurred during the last example where she took control of the situation. It's sort of like in your mind, you're suddenly in control.
It is important when we talk about ICE to talk about warrants because of what ICE does with warrants. Here's some examples up on the screen of actual warrants, real warrants, legal warrants. And I want to highlight a few things about them. They all look, a lot of them look a little bit different. They look different from each other. But one thing that's a common feature of an actual real legal warrant is that it comes from a court. A court issued the warrant. And so often that court name is going to be towards the top of the warrant. Here's one from Valley County. And you can see it says in the District Court of the 4th Judicial District of the State of Idaho in and for Valley County. Another thing that is on these warrants is a detailed description of what the warrant is for. And this is a search warrant for a house. And it's described, it's not just like this address, because they have to have an actual more detailed description than that, because the reality is if you try to go to an address, as anybody who's ordered anything online knows, sometimes it doesn't get to the right place. And so here it says house and detached garage located at this address, McCall, Idaho. The house and detached garage is a light brown with dark brown trim and river rock finish around the attached garage doors and bottom part of the house. The house and detached garage are on the south side of Whitefoot. The front door of the house faces north, and so forth. So you'll have a detailed description, and then it'll have a detailed description of what they're supposed to be looking for. And sometimes it's a person, and in this case it's for stuff. Possession items including but not limited to possession, manufacture, storage, and or distribution of illegal substances. And then, critically, it has a signature from an actual judge on it. And it says when it was issued, at what date and what time. So here's another one. This is from a federal court. Again, right at the top tells you that it comes from a court. And then it describes exactly where it is served. This is an activist warrant, and so they are looking for pamphlets, documents, literature, materials in any form regarding the Animal Liberation Front and the Earth Liberation Front, retail receipts, credit card statements, bank statements, improvised explosive and incendiary devices or components for the same. And then you'll see all this digital stuff which they want, which come to the electronic security thing in a while, that we'll have with the rest, and we'll learn more about that. And so it's just, these are circulating around the room. The other thing that warrants will have in them usually is whether they can be served at night. To be served at night, a warrant has to specifically be authorized by the judge to be served at night. You'll see this one is not authorized to be served at night. The judge struck through that part of the warrant. Contrast that with what an ICE warrant looks like. Here's one example of a standard ICE warrant. And you'll note that it doesn't come from a court at all. It comes from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And it doesn't really have much of a description. It'll have like somebody's name on here. And then who is it signed by? Not a judge. Signed by just another ICE officer. So that's the difference between these things.
Is that still a legal warrant?
It is not. I mean, this is a highly contentious legal issue in the United States right now as to what the meaning of those warrants are, but they don't really authorize these officers to do what they've been doing. This kind of summarizes what we were just talking about, the difference between these types of warrants. Court warrant issued by a court, has a specific location, has an expiration date, has a judge's signature. An ICE warrant not issued by a court is just really a scare tactic to try to get people to open their doors.
Do people have to open their
our doors for an ICE warrant?
You don't have to open your doors for any warrant. You would just say, we don't have enough time to practice a warrant, but the officers show up, they say they have a warrant. You can ask them, and it's a good idea to ask them to slide it under your door or put it up against the window so you can get a good photo of it or read it and determine if maybe it's being served on the wrong location. But then you're just going to go back to saying what? I'm going to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches. I want to see a lawyer. Now, you'll have to make your own decision whether you're going to open your door. If you don't open your door, they're probably going to bust through it or break it, come into your house. But you don't ever have to open that door.
That the same for both ICE and court warrants?
Anybody.
What they can search on that first warrant was like super duper detailed. So if you actually say that I don't consent to any searches, and they decide they're gonna search your shed that wasn't on the warrant, does saying that invalidate anything they find in my shed?
They could, yeah.
Okay.
Because even if they show up with a warrant, I mean, this is what ICE. This is like what ICE does. Is they show these fake warrants to people, and then people say, okay, come on in, go on in, and do all this stuff. Same thing with a court warrant. They show up with a warrant that's for a specific thing. They come in and then they ask you if they can. Mind if I go in here? Go ahead. You can also find, if you Google differences between court warrant and ICE warrant, you'll find all this stuff. Don't use Google though. You use your favorite search engine, Start Page or Ecosia or whatever. Planning and prep, ways that you can prevent law enforcement encounters in the future. Memorize key phone numbers. For those of you activists going to protests, I hate to say it, but it's 2025, and in Georgia right now, the prosecutors in the state of Georgia are using people who wrote lawyers' names on their bodies as basis for terrorism enhancement, saying they were planning to cause a riot. So memorize those numbers.
Or write it somewhere that they can't see it.
Yeah. If you have an A number, if you're a non-citizen who has an A number, memorize your A number and have your friends memorize it too, because the best way we can find you in ICE's system is if we have your A number, which is the way that ICE tracks people. Make a safety plan for stuff that you need if you're going to be incarcerated, even for a short period of time. Share this stuff with people so that they know how to help you. Prepping your home. Know where and how you can see outside in case cops do come to your house. It might not be because they have a warrant. They just come because they've got some questions, and figure out how you can see who it is. See if people can slide papers under your door. Teach your guests how to do all the things we learned tonight. Prep your car. We talked about this a little bit. Clip the registration, proof of insurance to the driver's side visor. Lock the glove compartment and other containers because they can't get in there. If they're locked and they might have trouble getting in there, if you don't give them consent. There is some evidence to suggest that the cleaner your car is, the less likely, there's less likelihood of a search. I don't know how true that is, but everybody in the world should have turn off fingerprint and face access on their phones, because cops will use that to get your phones, and then they'll use that to get all your friends' names and look at all your text messages. There's a whole training about all of this stuff that we won't have time to go into tonight, but think about what you're keeping on your devices, especially if you're doing things like intervening with ICE arrests, because they'll get that and then they'll have a lot more information. On Wednesdays, that's when we're going to build on our skills with interacting with law enforcement and decide that we're going to do that intentionally and talk about what that looks like, both videoing cops, educating people about their rights on a scene at the last minute so that they have that information, and then other ways that we can engage with ICE and law enforcement during those interactions. Last thing, if you want to say it with me, is what Assata Shakur taught us. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Thanks, everyone.
This was even more valuable than I ever expected, so thank you so much.
People can come Wednesday if they couldn't make it tonight. We're going to do a brief review at the beginning of some of the things from tonight, but those of you who are here tonight and come on Wednesday, you're going to be much better prepared to do the things that we're going to try to practice on Wednesday.
Bay Vote is all volunteer. It's mostly young people, and if anyone has the resources to help Bay Vote, it's how I've decided to activate because I think young people are super courageous and super smart, and they are my mentors. So if you can help in any way, Babe Vote, with this, with the training, with any thing, we would love that. If you don't have the resources to do that, you're welcome to come anytime. Yeah.
Can you just describe Babe Vote exactly?
Babe Vote is Babe Vote empowers young people to organize their communities for democracy. You can find us at babevote.org. It's led by Gen Z folks. Olivia's the president. I'm the token boomer. But we have, 6 on the board? And they're all just young, amazing people. So we'd love to have your support. Spread the word, and that's great if you can bring friends. We do want them to sign up, okay, on the Mobilize link, because we have learned to look out for some people that we might not want. So be sure and sign up, and have them sign up if they're going to come. We won't share their name or anything. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Sam, for hosting, and thank Richie for being here.